stages really that you can get. So yeah, big welcome. You're now working as Yorkshire reporter at GB News, and I'd like to talk a bit more about your career in a moment. But you also found yourself actually at the heart of a big news story whilst you were at Hull Live, when you won a court case against a particularly nasty online troll. So we're going to put up a slide showing the abuse that Anna received directly. It is quite distressing and it is quite offensive, so we apologise for that, but I actually think it's really important for you to see it, and Anna is happy for you to see it, and it has been published in her own newspaper, online as well. So yeah, do you want to just sort of talk us through what happened, what the story was really?
Yeah, definitely. Just to say sort of before that, the trolling was quite prolific from social media. So a lot of our stories did go on social media, Facebook, and you would get sort of nasty comments on there. Not so much about your story, but it could be about you as a person or what they thought. So that was already bubbling on. But yes, in particular, you can kind of ignore that a bit more when it's social media, but this was actually an email that had to go in my inbox and see it. And it was sort of titled as a potential story idea. I thought it was somebody contacting me about that. And then when I opened it, it came to the bottom that it was about a story I'd done about a local councillor and somebody who was sort of defending her in a way about the story that we'd written. But in it, she was saying that I should go kill myself, that I was a white supremacist, a racist, a Nazi. And she said that she knew where I lived as well. And if we didn't take that story down, she would basically publish my address for anyone to come and give retribution about the story.
And that was presumably for you what really sort of separated it from, as you say, the other kind of personal stuff, which equally shouldn't really be acceptable, but you actually felt your safety was threatened.
Definitely, yeah. When people are saying they can publish where you live, you don't know who's going to come and knock on your door. So that was definitely the impetus for the police, I think, as well, to take it really seriously under malicious communications, and they did, which was great as well.
Yes. So did you kind of took it to your employer, which was Reach, and did they take the decision to contact the police? Did they support you to kind of do that eventually?
Yeah, they'd not quite got a procedure in place when I was there. I believe they have now. It's somebody from Trinity, isn't it, that's sort of working there to protect journalists from this kind of abuse. But yes, in the end, it was suggested that I report that directly to the police. And yeah, sort of took that into my own hands. They got a copy of the email. My editor at the time, Jenna, was very supportive because this same person had been sending emails to her as well, not on that scale, but quite vicious emails about Hull Live, about her being editor there. So that all added up as proof against this person that they had a real vendetta against the paper.
Yeah. And you know, just to be sort of clear and reiterate, this is you just doing your job. You don't have any views. You weren't portraying your own views. It was you holding a local councillor to account, basically, wasn't it?
Completely, yeah. It was something that my editor had asked me to write. I went to this councillor, done the due diligence, asked her for a comment. We put that in. It was completely fair and balanced. It wasn't a one-sided attack. Like you say, it's just me doing my job. And I always find it strange that people seem to take it out personally on that journalist rather than going through proper channels and complaining to the news outlet about that story, because ultimately I can't control what we publish. That's the editor's decision in the end.
And what was that like for you, Anna, on a sort of personal level? You know, I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like, well, A, to get that sort of abuse on a regular basis, but then to feel that somebody knows where you live and mentions your boyfriend and, you know, personal details like that.
Yeah, it was quite scary, really. And you think they know how I look, know what I look like, because a lot of the stories I did, I'd put my face to it. So you can think, do they do they know me in the street? Is anything going to happen? So yeah, it was quite scary, and that's why I was so glad that the police did take it seriously and find this person.
That's right. So it was a woman, wasn't it?
It was a woman, yeah.
Which is grim, but
Yeah.
and what was the sentence? I can't remember what she got. She didn't get very much, did she?
No, it was in magistrates. It was 85 weeks community service,
Right.
And £100 compensation. So I get £20 in my bank account every month,
right,
in the next 5 months. So yeah, victim compensation as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you feel that's enough? I mean, do you feel the punishment fits the crime kind of thing?
I think it should be a bit more serious, but I was glad that it was actually taken seriously, because we've made these complaints before to the police, and without it being...
Sorry, can you keep quiet while we're talking? Sorry.
Without it being a personal threat of harm to yourself, there's something that they can't always do. You know, if they're calling you a name or something like that, it has to reach a certain threshold. So in a way, this was taken seriously because of those threats. Yeah.
Okay, well, sort of moving on, I mean, have you got any tips for our students who sadly might face similar sort of stuff? You know, because a lot of, certainly regional journalism, you're going live onto Facebook, aren't you? You're going live now onto national TV, but, you know, some of those comments are coming up on Facebook literally as you're doing your broadcast, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say don't stand for it would be my advice. Report it, whether you can report these things to Facebook, you can report them to Twitter, especially if someone's prolific in doing those things as well. Sadly, they often hide behind fake accounts with fake pictures, fake names, so it's difficult to find out who they are. And there's been talk, hasn't there, about, you know, registering to have media accounts as well, so you know actually who's behind it. But I'd say always report it. They do say you have to have a thick skin. In some ways you do, but you shouldn't be treated like that just for doing your job. So I wouldn't normalise it or accept it. I would report it. I would speak to colleagues as well, editors about it, just to get a bit of moral support as well about how to handle it. And just, it's hard not to, but try not to take it personally. These people are trolls. They've got nothing better to do with their lives than sit behind a keyboard or type on the phone and make these comments. So
yeah, and as you say, hiding behind anonymity quite often as well.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. Let's talk a bit about your career in general then. So after your qualification here, you moved on to That's TV in York, and then Whole Live, which is part of Reach, the biggest commercial news publisher in the UK. Talk us through some of the highlights of kind of working there, because you did all sorts of things, didn't you?
Yeah, at Whole Live, I loved that it was so varied. So one day you could be covering court, covering an inquest, doing some serious hard-hitting news. Other days you could be sort of going to family fun days or fantastic events that were going on in the city centre and covering that. Probably the highlight, though, we touched upon it, was asking the question to the government minister during COVID, and the fact that I'd sort of been out reporting and seeing how people in Hull and East Yorkshire were finding it so hard under the lockdowns. It's sort of an area of deprivation where people are struggling with money, and with a lot of people being laid off and not being able to keep their jobs. One of the questions that I asked was around, I'd gone to the cash converters queue, and it was when non-essential retail could open once more. But sadly, they were queuing down the road to sell possessions because COVID had meant that they couldn't put food on the table for their families. And one lady I spoke to in particular, she was selling her son's Nintendo because they'd lost their jobs. They worked in hospitality. They couldn't be put on the furlough scheme because the jobs just went. So I asked a question about that, which was quite personal based on what I'd seen. And I think that puts it more than facts and figures and giving statistics about what people went through. And also I spoke about a lady whose wife had died within 3 weeks of catching it, and she believed the government lockdown should have been sooner. and she was angry that there wasn't that inquiry yet into finding out how this happened and why. So it was sort of like little old me at Hull Live, one of the regionals after Sky and BBC, ITV had asked all their questions. I went last, and he gave everybody else 3 questions, and he was cutting me off after my second. I was like,
yeah,
no,
noticed that. Yeah,
I've got another one.
persisted.
You gave everybody else a question. So yeah, that was a real highlight. And what I really liked about regional journalism was helping people as well, giving people a voice that didn't have one. And it could be as simple as the council hadn't come and fixed the shower after months. But as soon as the papers got involved, sort of the next day, there was somebody out coming to fix it for them. So I really liked that side of things as well. And living in the community as well. Like I say, I'm from Leeds, but I moved to Hull for the job. And you do become really passionate about the people and the community, and you want to share their story, share what a great area it is, but also bring up what issues there are as well and how you can combat them.
I think regional journalism, which often is your first step in journalism, isn't it? And it does, local and regional journalism, you do feel you're actually making a difference to people's lives quite directly, don't you? So it's a fantastic thing to start off with. You did all sorts of fun things as well, didn't you? Eat at Wetherspoons for a week or something?
Yes, yeah, got a lot of freebies with that job, definitely. Yeah, all around eating as well. So yeah, eating at Wetherspoons for a week. I did sort of a food bank, so I went and lived off a food bank for a week to see what that was like as well. Reduced discount food, what that was like. I even met my boyfriend through it as well. I did a story on what it was like to join up to Bumble. And now I'm engaged.
Oh, congratulations. That's really great.
Yeah, a lot of in-depth stuff there. So it works. That was all from a news story.
Brilliant. I think we had our first Journalism and Media Week romance last year, didn't we? That's tell you about that later. But yes. So yeah, you never know where it will end up.
Exactly.
So you're now the Yorkshire reporter for GB News. So they've themselves kind of made the news recently with the founder, Andrew Neil, leaving quite quickly after setting it up. What attracted you to the job?
It was the fact that it was a brand new channel. It was the fact that I was already doing a lot of multimedia already, working at the paper. So we'd do a lot of Facebook Lives, we'd do a lot of video interviews as well. And I really enjoyed that side of it. And the thing is, regional journalism is great, but there's only so far you can go before you feel like you've peaked, because there's not those specialisms anymore. So you can't go to be, say, a health reporter, an education reporter, everyone's sort of a general reporter. So when I saw that GB News had come up, I thought that was a fantastic way to get into broadcast, because a lot of the other more established places, you need to have started in there. They don't always take people from a print background. And it was the fact that they were really passionate about giving people in the regions a voice. And they've got a tagline that says, if it matters to you, it matters to us. And that's genuinely true. So that's using the things that I know and loved from working in regional journalism, helping people, sharing these amazing stories from the area, raising issues if there are any, but then being able to put that on a national platform was what really attracted me to it.
Yeah, so getting out of London for a mainstream channel, and the kind of Westminster bubble and all of that. Yeah. So you were telling me earlier about how you kind of turn up at some of these big events, like, for example, Claudia Lawrence, the York chef who's been missing for over 10 years, is it now?
Yeah,
I think?
more than 12. Yeah.
12 years, is it? And there was a new development in the investigation, and so off you go to do your live, and like everybody else is turning up with the sat vans and the cameraman, and you're kind of setting yourself up with your own kit. You're doing everything. It's just you, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So me and the rest of the regional journalists, we sort of got a week of training on how to use the cameras, on how to edit on Premiere Pro, and then off we went, really. So yeah, like you say, there's cameramen and everything, but once you know how, it's fine being able to do that on your own. And I think that's an extra skill that you can give as well, not just being a reporter, but also being a camera operator at the same time. And we research and find all our stories as well. So you sort of a researcher slash producer, you're a journalist, and you're a camera op, sort of all in one.
So you're really getting to do it all. That's quite an attraction about the job, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You can set your own agenda. You can be at the heart of what's going on in your patch, because we all are from the patches that we serve. So you know your contacts in the area, you know what's happening, and you can feed that back to London, who won't know because they're not in the patches. So yeah, there's a lot of trust and reliance on us that we know what's going on and what people are talking about to be able to share that on a national scale.
Yeah, so for you, for example, doing sort of live pieces to camera was something that you hadn't done before and had to kind of dive in. And
and on the first day that we launched, I was on the breakfast show, so I was there at 6 a.m. As one of the first reporters ever to go live.
Wow.
So yeah, it was quite daunting. Like I said, I'd done Facebook lives before, but it's different when you're getting used to the kit and setting all that up.
You've got enough to think about with all of that, haven't you, as well?
That's it, yeah. But once you get into the swing of things, you know, it's just like talking to your friend while you're looking down the camera. You've got support through your earpiece as well. You've got a lovely team in the gallery that are helping you, and it becomes second nature in a way as to knowing what to do.
So these guys are all kind of setting out. So what sort of advice would you have for them about first steps or first steps in their career?
Yeah, I'd say definitely from a student, start doing things, whether it's, if you like, writing, you know, build up your portfolio basically of what you can show of your work. And it sounds a bit corny, and I remember we were taught this while we were here, but there is a story on every corner as well. And it's just keeping your eyes open as to what's going on around you as well, not always relying on social media to find things. I think you get the best story by keeping your eyes and ears open and pushing for that, really. So But build up your contacts as well. That's always important. Never burn your bridges, because you don't know when you're going to meet somebody again.
That's true. In some ways, it's quite a small world, isn't it? So,
definitely.
We've had a few people this week say, be nice to people. I think that's very good advice. Yeah. So, Anna, what might be next for you? I mean, obviously, you're enjoying with GB News at the moment, but is there any particular direction you might like to go in?
Yeah, definitely really enjoying it at the moment. We're sort of 6 months in, so seeing how it goes. But maybe long term in the future, I really like doing sort of documentary style journalism, more long form pieces, really embedding yourself in the community or in a particular organisation, finding out how they work and then reporting on that. Yeah, it is the human stories that really make journalism, isn't it, as a career, I think. So, yeah, that sounds great. Okay, shall we have some questions for Anna? Yes. Let's go to the noisy corner over there. Got something to say?
I was just going to ask, how do you feel when you receive some positive feedback from perhaps a higher up or maybe just someone online?
It's really nice, actually, and that's been a lovely contrast working at this job. I've not had hardly any trolling. It's a lot of nice comments online of people saying, we really like what you do, we really like your stories, keep it up. And I think it sometimes feels better when it's from a viewer rather than someone in your organisation, because ultimately they're the people that we're serving and watching what we're doing. So that does give you a real boost, because you think, I'm doing the right thing then. Obviously people are interested and it's important content that we're sharing. But definitely, praise from colleagues, praise from managers, it does make it all worthwhile, because it is so much hard work. So it is really nice to get that little pat on the back as well. Thank you.
I could probably say this at the end, but why not? During your week eating at Wetherspoons, what was your favourite meal and your least favourite meal?
Definitely the favourite was the pizza, because they make it there. I think they've got their own pizza oven, so definitely the pizza. I like the chicken. I think we've got the chicken and pepperoni one. I would go for that. Worst, I don't think I had a really bad meal, but Wetherspoons has been in the news for being stodgy on chips, hasn't it? So, you know, any meal that didn't give you enough chips. I've seen it. I'm not in it, but I have seen it.
It's obviously quite a talking point, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think they've had some results out today or yesterday, and there's been apparently there's more cocktails being sold, fewer ales and fewer breakfasts. So they think it's like the younger people are,
going in
and the older ones aren't so
Yeah.
much, maybe still nervous of
coming out.
Anyway.
Hi, I was just wondering if had your threat not mentioned your home address, do you reckon it still would have been taken as seriously? And then do you think there's enough in place to protect journalists from that sort of harassment?
No, I don't think it would. I think it wouldn't have reached the threshold to class it as malicious communications. I think it was the fact that the address was mentioned that was what the police honed in on, because then they were like, it's a safety threat. No, I think maybe we could look into more of sort of emotional abuse and the toll that that takes on you, rather than just a physical threat of your address. And yes, it would be great for more to be put in place. But the issue that the police do have is, are these anonymous accounts, and actually getting to the bottom of finding them. And they always say there's more on their agenda at the moment than doing that. But yes, definitely, if they had the capacity, I think you should always report it when you're getting nasty abuse like that. But yeah, it would be great if more could be done for the emotional side of it as well, not just the physical threat.
Yes, and certainly the research I've done talking to people like Jenna at your organisation, that recommendation came through quite strongly. Talk about it with your colleagues, because there may be other people who are also getting it, as you say, and then together that does build up a case or something.
Completely.
So yeah, definitely. Any others?
Hello.
Sorry, Ella,
no worries. I'm really curious to know, out of all the high-profile people that you have met, whether they be broadcasters or whether they be politicians or whoever, are there any standout moments, either positive or negative?
Oh, that's a good question. High profile as in sort of politicians and that kind of thing. Probably the biggest one was the question I asked to Oliver Dowden in Parliament about the COVID inquiry. So yeah, I'd probably say that one.
And he was quite slippery. Well, the usual kind of
trying to slime out of it. Yeah. Jess.
Hi. Obviously, no one should be subjected to the kind of abuse that you've received. And this is kind of a two-part question. Do you think social media perpetuates like the hate that people receive and think about, and gives it a platform to share? And on the flip of that, do you ever reflect on views that GB News has a similar effect of creating that kind of upswell of hate?
So in terms of social media, it can definitely be used as a force for good, but it can be used as a force for bad, that's for sure. People will say things on social media that they would never say to your face. And I think that anonymity that it can breed and whip up as well, if somebody says something, somebody else can jump on the bandwagon with it. So yeah, I definitely think it's a force for good, but it's also a force for bad as well. And no, in terms of GB News, we have been branded as a right-wing channel. We're not. You can't be with Ofcom. If you learn that, you've got to be completely fair and balanced. And we're about being in the middle, and we're about encouraging debate and opinion and not saying you can't say that. It's all about free speech, but having a balanced view of somebody that thinks X, somebody that thinks Y, and having a polite discussion about that issue.
Hi, yeah, I just wondered, have you ever considered, like, obviously with the abuse that you got, like quitting or like downgrading like your job to get less like attention?
There are some days when you think, am I paid enough for this? That's for sure. But no, in a way, I think you'd be letting people win if you did that. You'd be letting the people that are giving you this abuse win. So no, in a way, it sort of bolstered me on to do more stories about Wetherspoons and things like that, because people said that's not proper journalism. But we've just had a talking discussion there that people are still interested in those more feature style, softer journalism stories. So no, it sort of probably pushed me the other way to say, screw you, I'll carry on.
Yes, Noah.
Hi. So obviously you're just one person as part of an organization, but like, because GB News is a new kind of channel, there was a lot of maybe scrutiny on mistakes made, and even subsequently, things like hiring of Farage or Andrew Neil, kind of that whole thing. Was it hard to kind of get on with your job with all that kind of around you and all the news about your channel itself?
Being a regional journalist, you sort of out of the studio. So when we're not out on the road interviewing, we're back home in our houses, really. So no, I didn't sort of get involved in that side of things. It was more just about being in the regions and speaking to people and just carrying on with the job, really. So no, it didn't affect me as much in that sense.
I'm going to ask a technical question, if you don't mind.
Go on, Mark.
Apart from your camera, your tripod, what other kit have you got then that you're communicating back to the
So
base
we
with?
use the live view box. So that's what we use to go live back to the studio. We've got sort of wireless mics. I call it an inhaler. I don't know what the technical term is, but it looks like an inhaler. You plug it in and that lets you go wireless on your microphone. And then we've got clip mics as well. So normally if you do an interview, you'd do it with the wireless mic between you both if you're both in it, or do a clip mic if you're reporting live yourself. And that's about it. It's quite heavy.
Compact.
Well, yeah, because we're doing a lot with smartphones, which obviously is a lot easier to kind of much more mobile, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But you're still, you are using full scale cameras, and
There is an option we've got on our phones as well. It's like a live view button, which will enable us to either put the phone on a tripod or go live with the phone. And that works really well if you're at something like a protest, because if you're on your own, anybody could be taking your kit, shoving you. So if you can hold the phone yourself, it's a lot better way to report. And as long as you've got the right internet signal, you've got 4G or 5G, that could work just as good. And it sometimes looks a bit better as well, because it shows that you're really at the heart of what's going on. And people are probably more likely to speak to you as well with a phone rather than trying to vox people with a camera kit.
yes, I think they feel less intimidated
That's
often,
it.
don't they?
Yeah.
Great. Any more? Yes.
Hi. So after you took action against the troll, did you see a change at all in the criticism that you received online, like for better or for worse?
Probably actually didn't see as much. And I think that's maybe because the paper had published it as well to say, we don't stand for this, basically. It still happens. But yeah, maybe a little bit less that showed that you will report it and not just stand for it. Yeah.
Just linking to one of your previous answers, how some people are telling you that that's not journalism. What is your definition of journalism?
I think it's any story that people would be interested in. I think that's the same thing I think I got asked that on an interview, what is news? And it's not necessarily just current affairs. It's things that people are talking about, that people are interested in, and that you'll have an audience for as well.
Yeah, it's kind of talking points as much as anything. Yeah,
Definitely.
different levels of story.
We did a lot of features as well at Hull Live, because there's not always news every day, and you have to be creative and you have to think of ideas like that as well. So I think features work just as well as your snap breaking news.
Yeah. And it's you that's coming up with the ideas, Anna. So you have a morning meeting, you hook up to that, and you're pitching your ideas.
Yes, that's sort of how it was at Hull Live. You'd have your editor coming round in the morning. But with GB News, it's more because they're in London. So it's more us sort of feeding to them what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Any more?
I've got one. I'm just wondering about contacts, actually, and how you network, because we've heard from a number of different journalists this week, and who live or die on their contacts, I think, really, and the stories are able to break. And I'm wondering how you've cultivated those contacts, because I think sometimes when you from a standing start as a student, that can seem a little bit daunting and wondering how you're going to do that. And I'm just wondering how you approach that.
Yeah, so that's sort of I've had to go from that because I've just been reporting in Hull, and now I've got Yorkshire as a whole patch, which has been a big change for me to cover. So it was a case of just signing up to, you know, all your police alerts, signing up to all councils. Charities have been a great outlet of stories for me as well, so signing up to those as well. Keeping an eye on social media as well about sort of events and things like that. If you can get yourself along to them as well, it's always great to put a face to a name, and doing it that way. Zoom calls as well are a lot more acceptable now, aren't they, after the pandemic? So there's always time for that as well. If you just want to introduce yourself, introduce what you do to a certain organisation, and then keep in touch from that. And I've had stories as well where other people have then recommended something to me. So I've gone out and done one story and they've said, oh, you ought to speak to Joe Bloggs about this. I've got his number if you want to give him a call. And then it can snowball a bit like that as well. Once you've developed a good relationship with somebody, they can pass you on to other people as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got one more.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if you think now is the time for social media to have an independent regulator.
Oh, that's a good question. I think there should be more regulation online, definitely. And I think that's the way they're going at the moment in Parliament, isn't it, with looking at that. But people should still have free speech as well. That's the thing. I'm happy to take criticism if people don't like a story, or they'd rather hear about this or rather hear about that. So you wouldn't want to clamp down too much to stop people having those opinions and views, because free speech is so important. But I think there definitely should be something more done with anonymity and people being able to hide behind accounts and then not get pulled up for when they're overstepping the line.
I think that's the difference, isn't it? I mean, you wouldn't shout it at somebody in the street and expect to be anonymous, but you can somehow do it on social media and hide behind that. So, yeah, I think that is the difference. Okay, well, thank you so much, Anna. I mean, I think, having seen the actual nature of the abuse that was aimed at you, I think you're incredibly brave, and really great to hear your story, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you
very
having me.
much. Thank you. Congratulations on the
Thank you. No, thank you.